In the surveillance lab, Jungkook played a grainy video of the suspect withdrawing money from the bank. Taehyung leaned in, studying the footage closely. "Wait," he said, pointing to a frame. "Pause it there." The figure in the footage turned slightly, and though they looked eerily similar to Wyon, there was a small, distinct taetae bracelet with a charm that Taehyung recognized instantly. "Yeri," he muttered under his breath. "Whyon's best friend?" Jungkook asked, his eyebrows shooting up. "Are you sure?" "Positive," Taehyung said, his jaw tightening. "She gave Wyon that bracelet as a gift, but Wyon hasn't worn it in months." "Yeri must have kept an identical one for herself." "Why would Yeri frame Wyon?" Jungkook asked, baffled. Taehyung's mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. He recalled moments when Yeri seemed overly involved in their lives, her subtle digs at their relationship, her jealousy disguised as concern. "Because she hates me," Taehyung said grimly. "And she's always been jealous of Wyn's happiness. She probably thought this was the perfect way to destroy us both." That evening, Taehyung returned to Wyn's cell, his face set with determination. "I know who did this," he announced. Wyon looked at him, her expression unreadable. "And it was Yeri," he said. "She's the one who framed you." Her eyes widened, shock and betrayal flickering across her face. "Yeri, my best friend, you're saying she did this?" Taehyung nodded. "I have proof. The surveillance footage, the forged documents, it all points to her." Wyon sank onto the bench, her head spinning. "I don't understand. Why would she do this to me?" "Because she's jealous," Taehyung said softly, kneeling before her. "She wanted to tear us apart, and for a moment, she succeeded. But I'm not letting her win, Wyon. I'll make sure she pays for what she's done." Wyon looked at him, her expression conflicted. "And what about us, Taehyung? Can you fix that too?" "I'll spend the rest of my life trying," he vowed, his voice thick with emotion. "But I need you to let me, please, Wyon." Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment before she spoke. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Taehyung, but for the sake of our baby ... I'll try." The confrontation with Yeri was inevitable. Wyon couldn't sit still after Taehyung's revelation. The betrayal she felt from her best friend twisted in her chest like a knife. She couldn't understand how someone so close could stoop so low. Wyon was released on Taehyung's orders, though the tension between them lingered like a storm cloud. They drove to Yeri's apartment in silence, the air heavy with unspoken words. Taehyung glanced at Wyon occasionally, his heart aching at her tear-streaked face and trembling hands resting on her lap. When they arrived, Yeri opened the door with her usual bright smile, but it faltered when she saw Wyn's piercing glare and Taehyung's steely expression. "Wyon, what's going on?" Yeri asked, feigning innocence. "Cut the act, Yeri," Wyon snapped. Stepping inside, "We know what you did." Yeri's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly, crossing her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, really?" Taehyung said, his voice cold and sharp. He held up a USB drive. "This is surveillance footage of you withdrawing the stolen money and planting evidence to frame Wyon. Care to explain?" Yeri's eyes darted between them, her mask of innocence cracking. I don't know what you're talking about." "That's not me." Wyon took a step closer, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. "How could you do this? Yeri, you were my best friend. I trusted you. I confided in you. And you framed me for a crime I didn't commit." Yeri's defenses crumbled, and tears welled up in her eyes. "You don't understand, Wyon," she said, her voice breaking. "You have everything, Taehyung. Love, a perfect life. And me. I've always been in your shadow. Always second best." "Second best," Wyon repeated, her voice rising. "So you decided to ruin my life because of your insecurities. Do you even realize what you've done, what I've been through?" Taehyung stepped in, his voice laced with fury. "You nearly destroyed her, Yeri. You destroyed us. And for what? Jealousy. Yeri's hairs turned to sobs, but Wyden didn't feel an ounce of pity. She took a deep breath, her voice steady but cold. You were like a sister to me, Yeri, but now all I feel is disgust. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed every moment of friendship we shared. Yeri looked at her, guilt etched into her features. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I just wanted you to know what it felt like to lose something. Wyan shook her head, her heart breaking all over again. Congratulations, Yeri. You got what you wanted. I've lost so much because of you. But I'll tell you one thing, I'll never forgive you for this. Taehyung stepped forward, pulling out his handcuffs. Yeri, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and obstruction of justice. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As they left Yeri's apartment, Wyden leaned against the car, her strength draining away. Taehyung stood beside her, unsure of what to say. I thought she was my family, Wyden said softly, staring at the ground. She betrayed you in the worst way possible, Taehyung said, his voice gentle. But you're not alone in this, Wyden. I'm here. And I'll keep proving that I'm worthy of your trust. Wyden turned to him, her eyes red and swollen. It's not that simple, Taehyung. You didn't just doubt me, you shattered something between us. I'm trying to forgive you, but it's hard, Taehyung nodded, his expression filled with regret. I know, and I'll give you all the time you need. I just want to be here for you and our baby, no matter what. Wyden hesitated for a moment before placing a hand on her stomach. This baby deserves a better version of us, Taehyung. We owe them that much. Taehyung placed his hand over hers, his eyes filled with determination. We'll get there, Wyden, together. Time didn't heal all wounds, but it gave them space to breathe. Over the months, Wyden and Taehyung had tried to rebuild their fractured relationship, but every step forward seemed to drag the weight of the past along with it. Wyden spent her days preparing for the baby, her growing belly a constant reminder of the little life depending on her. Taehyung, on the other hand, bent over backward to be present, attending doctor's appointments, setting up the nursery, and even taking leave from work. He tried his best to show Wyden that she was his priority now, but the shadows of his previous mistakes lingered. One evening, as Taehyung came home from running errands, he found Wyden sitting on the living room couch, staring at an ultrasound picture in her hands. Her face was unreadable, and he hesitated before approaching her. Wyden, he said softly, sitting beside her. One evening, as Taehyung came home from running errands, he found Wyden sitting on the living room couch, staring at an ultrasound picture in her hands. Her face was unreadable, and he hesitated before approaching her. Wyden, he said softly, sitting beside her. She didn't look at him, her fingers tracing the edges of the picture. Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing? Taehyung's heart sank. What do you mean? She finally met his eyes, and he saw the pain she still carried. Bringing this baby into a broken relationship. What if we can't fix things, Tae? What if we're just pretending for the sake of something that's already gone? Taehyung reached out, taking her hand in his. We're not pretending, Wyden. I know I messed up, but I'm fighting for us because I believe we can make this work. I know it won't happen overnight, but I'm not giving up on you or our baby. Wyden's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. I'm scared, Taehyung, scared that I'll always be second-guessing you. That I'll never trust you the way I used to. And I hate feeling like this, but I can't help it. Taehyung's voice broke as he replied, I'm scared too. Why? I'm scared that I'll never be able to fix what I broke. But every day, I wake up determined to try because I love you. I always have, even when I let my fears and doubts get the better of me. You're not second to anything in my life, Wyden. You never were. The twist, just as Wyden seemed on the verge of responding, her phone buzzed on the table. She wiped her tears and picked it up, frowning at the unknown number. "Hello," she answered cautiously. A distorted voice crackled on the other end. "YN, you should be careful who you trust. The people closest to you aren't always what they seem." Her blood ran cold. "Who is this?" The line went dead. Taehyung leaned forward, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" YN looked at him, her heart pounding. "Someone just called me. They said I shouldn't trust the people closest to me." Taehyung's expression darkened. "It's probably just someone messing with you. Yeri's trial is coming up. Maybe it's connected to that." But YN shook her head, a chill running down her spine. It didn't feel random, Tae. It felt like a warning. That night, YN couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with possibilities. Was there someone else involved in framing her? Someone who hadn't been caught yet? And then it hit her, a memory she'd pushed aside in the chaos of everything that had happened. Yeri hadn't acted alone. There were whispers, small hints that someone else had been pulling the strings. Her breathing quickened as she sat up in bed, clutching her stomach protectively. Taehyung stirred beside her, his hand reaching out instinctively. "YN, what's wrong? I think ... double quote," she began, her voice trembling. "I think Yeri wasn't working alone, and whoever was behind this, they're not done with us yet." YN couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. The distorted voice on the phone, the cryptic warning, it all pointed to someone still out there, watching, waiting. And if they had gone this far to frame her before, what would stop them from trying again? The next morning, she shared her suspicions with Taehyung. He listened intently, his jaw tightening as she spoke. "I think you're right," Taehyung admitted, pacing the living room. Yeri was smart, but she didn't have the resources to pull off something this elaborate on her own. Someone else had to be behind it. YN hugged herself, feeling a chill despite the warmth of the sun streaming through the windows. But who and why? Taehyung stopped pacing, his expression dark. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I'll start digging into Yeri's connections and see if anything comes up." "Be careful," YN said softly, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. "I can't lose you, Taehyung, not now." He stepped closer, wrapping her in his arms. "You won't lose me, YN. I'll protect you and our baby, no matter what it takes." A week later, Taehyung's investigation led him to a shocking discovery. He barged into their apartment, his face pale and drawn. "YN," he said, his voice trembling. "You need to see this." She looked up from the couch, alarmed. "What is it?" He handed her a file, his hands shaking. It's about your father, YN, my father." She repeated, confused. "What does he have to do with this?" Taehyung sat down beside her, running a hand through his hair. "I found records of financial transactions between your father and Yeri. Large sums of money. It looks like he was funding her all along." YN's world tilted. She stared at the file in disbelief. "No, that can't be right. My father would never do something like this." "I didn't want to believe it either," Taehyung said, his voice pained. "But the evidence is all there. He's been working behind the scenes, pulling the strings. And it doesn't stop with Yeri. He's connected to people who have a lot to gain from taking you down." Tears filled YN's eyes as she clutched the file. Why would he do this to me?" "I don't know," Taehyung admitted. "But I'm going to confront him. We need answers." The confrontation that evening, Taehyung and YN went to her father's house. The tension was palpable as they entered the luxurious living room where Lee Yeonjun sat, sipping whiskey like he didn't have a care in the world. My daughter and her husband," he said, smiling coldly. "What brings you here?" "Cut the act," YN said, her voice shaking with anger. She held up the file. "We know everything about the money. About Yeri, about how you've been sabotaging my life. Why, Dad, why would you do this to me?" Lee Yeonjun's smile didn't falter. He set his glass down and leaned back in his chair. Why? Because you've been nothing but a disappointment to me, Wyman, marrying some cop instead of someone who could actually elevate our family. You chose love over ambition, and I can't stand it. Taehyung's fists clenched at his sides, but Wyman placed a hand on his arm, stopping him from lashing out. So you decided to destroy me, Wyman said, her voice breaking. I'm your daughter, Dad. How could you do this? You were supposed to follow my path, Lee Yeonjun said coldly, not defy me. But you made your choice, Wyman. Now you'll live with the consequences. Taehyung stepped forward, his voice like ice. You've done enough damage, Yeonjun, and now you're going to pay for it. I've already handed over the evidence to the authorities. For the first time, Lee Yeonjun's expression faltered. You wouldn't dare. I dare, Taehyung said, his eyes blazing. You underestimated your daughter, and you underestimated me. The aftermath. Lee Yeonjun was arrested the next day, his empire crumbling under the weight of his crimes. For Wyman, the betrayal cut deep, but it also brought a sense of closure. As she stood in the nursery one evening, cradling her belly, Taehyung wrapped his arms around her from behind. Are you okay? He asked softly. I don't know, she admitted. It hurts, but I feel free. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally move on. I don't know, she admitted. It hurts, but I feel free. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally move on. Taehyung kissed her temple. We'll move on together, and we'll make sure our baby has the kind of life we never had, one filled with love and trust. Wyman leaned into him, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Thank you, Taehyung, for standing by me. For proving me wrong about you. He smiled against her hair. You'll never be second to anyone. Why? Not in my heart, and not in my life. And as they stood there, holding onto each other and the future they were building, Wyman finally felt like he could breathe again. A year later, the sound of laughter echoed through the park as children ran around, their voices carrying the carefree joy of youth. Wyman sat on a picnic blanket, the summer sun warming her skin as she adjusted the hat on her 1-year-old daughter's head. The little girl, with her big, curious eyes that mirrored Taehyung's, babbled happily, reaching for the soft toys scattered around her. Taehyung was nearby, standing at a small grill, flipping burgers with a focused expression. His sleeves were rolled up, and every so often, he glanced over at Wyman and their daughter, a soft smile lighting up his face. How's my little angel doing? He called out, setting the tongs aside and walking over to them. Your angel just tried to eat grass, Wyman teased, holding up a blade of green as evidence. Taehyung crouched down, his deep chuckle resonating as he scooped their daughter into his arms. Yeah, little one, grass isn't on the menu today. Later that evening, after their picnic had ended and their daughter was fast asleep in her crib, Wyman and Taehyung sat on the balcony of their home. The night was peaceful, the city lights twinkling like stars in the distance. Taehyung handed her a cup of tea and sat beside her, their hands naturally finding each other's. Today was perfect, Wyman said softly, resting her head on his shoulder. It was, he agreed, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. But every day with you and our daughter feels perfect to me. She looked up at him, her eyes glistening. I never thought we'd get here, Tae. There was a time I thought ... I thought we'd lost everything. Taehyung's gaze was tender as he cupped her face, his voice steady and filled with emotion. We almost did, but we fought for each other, Wyman. You never gave up on us, even when I gave you every reason to. And for that, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. You already have, Taehyung. You gave me this beautiful life, this family. And most of all, you gave me you. Taehyung leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her lips. It wasn't rushed or filled with urgency. It was the kind of kiss that spoke of love, trust, and a future they would build together. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. You'll always be my first priority, Whyvin. Always, and you'll always have my heart, she whispered, her hand resting on his chest where she could feel his steady heartbeat. They sat there in the quiet, holding each other as the world outside faded away. And in that moment, Whyvin knew they had found their happy ending not because life was perfect, but because they had chosen to weather its storms together.